I've been invisible for 3 years, and that invisibility was supposed to keep me alive. In Alpha King Charles's compound, a sprawling estate in the Appalachian wilderness where wolves run and old laws still hold, Omegas who get noticed end up claimed, discarded, or worse. So I learned to survive. Keep your head down in the kitchens. Work through the pain. Never, ever show weakness. Charles himself is a force of nature, broad-shouldered and dark-haired, with eyes like amber fire that can drop a challenger with a single look. I've seen him break bones in challenge circles while I scrubbed blood from the training yard afterward. Other alphas step aside when he walks through. I make myself invisible. My mother taught me that before the infection took her. Omegas endure, she'd whispered, her hand cold in mine. We survive by being useful, never by needing anything. For 3 years, I kept my secret, the injury from a training session that never healed right, the internal pain that steals my breath, the nights I bite down on rags to keep from screaming. I convinced myself I could endure forever. I was wrong. One night, I collapsed in the great hall during a feast, coughing blood onto expensive rugs while the pack stared. When Charles discovered I'd been hiding a life-threatening injury for 3 months, when he learned what Thomas's men did to me for refusing an alpha's touch, by dawn, half the pack was dead. The great hall feels different at night during the autumn feast. With the fires roaring high and the long tables groaning under platters of venison and root vegetables, it's chaos. Hundreds of voices, the clash of tankards, the wet sounds of meat torn from bone. I move through it like smoke, invisible in my gray servant's dress, collecting empty plates and avoiding eye contact with anyone who might remember I exist. My hands work on autopilot. Stack the bowls, scrape the scraps into the waste bucket, wipe the grease from carved wooden platters that have seen 100 years of pack gatherings. The work keeps me moving, and moving keeps the pain manageable. Sharp and constant on my left side, just below my ribs, like something broken grinding against something soft. 3 months now since Thomas's beta cornered me in the storage shed, his hand around my throat, his knee driving into my side when I said no. Just a bruise, I'd told myself. It'll heal. It hasn't healed. I stack a tray of crystal goblets, the expensive ones Charles insists on for formal feasts, and turn toward the servants' corridor that leads back to the kitchens. The air is cooler there, away from the fires, but my skin still feels too hot. Dizzy. I pause at the top of the stone steps, willing my vision to clear, counting breaths like my mother taught me. In for 4, out for 6. You can do anything for 6 seconds. Halfway down, the pain flares white hot. I stumble, catch myself against the wall, the tray tilting dangerously. One of the goblet's tips rolls, shatters against stone. The sound echoes up the stairwell like a gunshot. My chest tightens, not from fear of punishment, but from something else. Something wet and warm spreading beneath my ribs. Careful there. A voice behind me, rough and southern drawled. Not cruel, but not kind either. Indifferent. I force myself upright, bending to collect the broken glass with shaking fingers. I'm sorry. I'll replace it from my wages. The footsteps don't move on. They stop. Closer now. You're Rebecca. Not a question. A statement. I recognize the voice now, Marcus, Thomas's right hand. One of the old guard, who thinks Omega's getting medical care is a waste of pack resources. Thomas has been looking for you. My heart slams against my ribs. I keep my eyes down, focused on a shard of crystal catching torchlight. I haven't done anything wrong. Didn't say you did. His boots come into view, scuffed leather stained with training yard mud. But you've been avoiding the Omega quarters. Sleeping in the kitchen pantry instead. Makes a man wonder what you're hiding. Everything. I'm hiding everything. The injury. The pain that's gotten worse instead of better. The blood I coughed into my pillow 2 nights ago. The fact that I can barely stand upright without the world tilting sideways. I force myself to stand, still clutching the tray. I'm not hiding anything. I just prefer the quiet. Marcus tilts his head, studying me like I'm a problem that needs solving. His scent rolls over me, alpha musk mixed with gunpowder, and the sour edge of someone who enjoys having power over others. You look pale. You feeling all right? The question is a trap. If I say yes, he'll assign me more work. If I say no, I'm weak, damaged, disposable. I'm fine. The lie tastes like copper. I try to step around him. Excuse me, I need to get back. His hand catches my arm. Not hard, but firm. Proprietary. Thomas says you've been disrespectful. That you need to learn your place. The tray slips from my grip. I don't see it fall. Don't hear it shatter. Because the pain that's been building for 3 months suddenly rips through me like a knife dragged sideways through soft tissue. My knees buckle. The stone floor rushes up. Somewhere distant, Marcus is saying something, his voice sharp with alarm now instead of menace, but I can't hear him over the roaring in my ears. Blood blooms across my lips. Warm. Metallic. Wrong. The last thing I see before the world goes black is torchlight dancing across stone, and the dark shape of Marcus backing away like I'm something contagious. The last thing I think is, Mother was wrong. Enduring isn't surviving. It's just dying slowly. When I wake, I'm drowning. Not in water, in scent. Rich and overwhelming, pine smoke and bourbon, and something wild that makes my omega instincts sing even through the haze of pain. Alpha. Close. Too close. I try to move and agony lances through my side. A sound escapes me, half gasp, half whimper, and suddenly there are hands on my shoulders. Gentle. Firm. Don't move. The voice is a command wrapped in gravel, the kind of voice that expects obedience and gets it. The doctor's on his way. I force my eyes open. The room swims into focus slowly, dark wood paneling, a fire crackling in a stone hearth, fur pelts draped over leather furniture. Not the servants' quarters. Not even close. Alpha King Charles's private chambers. Panic floods my system, sharper than the pain. I try to sit up, to explain, to apologize for bleeding on what looks like a very expensive rug. I said don't move. Charles's face appears above me, all hard angles and amber eyes that glow in the firelight. His hand is still on my shoulder, and even through the pain I can feel the heat of it, the controlled strength. You collapsed in my hall. Coughed up blood. Marcus carried you here screaming about internal bleeding. I blink at him dizzy. I'm sorry. I didn't mean, I'll go back to the kitchens. You're not going anywhere. His eyes narrow, and there's something in them I don't recognize. Something that looks like rage, but not at me. How long? How long what? How long have you been in pain? The question cracks something open in my chest. 3 years of holding still, staying quiet, enduring. 3 months of this specific agony. And no one, not one person, has asked me that question. I'm fine, I whisper, because it's the only answer I know. Charles's jaw tightens. His thumb brushes my collarbone, and I realize I'm shaking. You're bleeding internally. You have a fever. You can barely breathe without whimpering. Try again. The gentleness in his voice undoes me more than the pain ever could. 3 months, I hear myself say. Since the training accident. What training accident? His voice goes very, very quiet. Omegas don't train with the warriors. I close my eyes. The truth sits on my tongue like poison, but I'm so tired of swallowing it. Thomas's beta. In the storage shed. I said I wasn't interested in being claimed. He didn't like that. Silence. When I open my eyes, Charles isn't looking at me anymore. He's staring at the door, his face carved from stone, his pupils blown wide and ringed with gold. The air in the room shifts, heavy with the weight of an alpha's rage barely leashed. Who else knows? His voice could cut glass. No one. I couldn't, the words tangle. I didn't want to be trouble. I didn't think anyone would care. I thought I could handle it. Charles's gaze snaps back to me, and the intensity in it makes my breath catch. You've been suffering for 3 months. In my pack. Under my roof. Each word is precise, controlled. And no one noticed. No one helped you. It's not a question, but I nod anyway. Something in his expression fractures. His hand moves from my shoulder to cup my face, thumb brushing my cheekbone with devastating gentleness. That ends now. The doctor arrives moments later, but I barely register the examination, the sharp intake of breath when he palpates my side, the urgent conversation about collapsed lungs and internal bleeding and infection. I'm too focused on Charles, still kneeling beside me, his hand now gripping mine like he's afraid I'll disappear. She needs surgery, the doctor says. Tonight. If we wait, then don't wait. Charles's voice is absolute. Do whatever it takes. As they prepare to move me, as the doctor lists everything that's wrong with me, everything I've been hiding, enduring, surviving, I watch Charles's face. Watch the way his features sharpen with each new revelation. Watch him transform from the brutal king who breaks bones in challenge circles to something else entirely. Something protective. Something possessive. Something that looks at me like I matter. The last thing I see before the sedative pulls me under is Charles standing, his eyes blazing amber, turning to face the door where Marcus still hovers uncertainly. Get Thomas, the Alpha King says, his voice ice and fury. Get his beta. Get everyone who knew she was hurt and did nothing. Get everyone who touched her without permission. Your Majesty, what? By dawn, Charles interrupts, his hand still holding mine even as darkness takes me. Half this pack is going to learn what happens when you let my mate suffer. Mate. The word follows me down into unconsciousness, impossible and terrifying and somehow, against everything I've learned about survival, like the first breath of air after drowning for 3 years. Dawn comes cold to the Appalachian compound, mist rolling through pine forests that surround Alpha King Charles's estate like a fortress of trees. I'm already awake when the first light touches the old stone kitchen, my hands buried in bread dough, breathing shallow to keep the pain manageable. In out. Don't think about the grinding sensation beneath your ribs. Don't acknowledge the wet rattle when you inhale too deep. Outside the kitchen windows, the compound sprawls like a contradiction. Ancient wolf statues guarding the main courtyard where pickup trucks park beside horse stables, modern security systems wired into stone buildings that have stood for 2 centuries. Old laws. New world. The same hierarchy that's always existed. I knead the dough in rhythm, push, fold, turn, watching through the window as Charles crosses from the training yard to the main house. Even at a distance, he's magnetic. Dark hair pulled back in a practical braid, leather jacket worn over what looks like pieces of ceremonial armor, moving with the casual confidence of someone who's never questioned his right to space. His eyes, amber, wolf-bright even in human form, scan the compound with the attention of a predator who misses nothing. I look away before he can sense observation. 3 years of practice makes it automatic. The injury announces itself with a sharp flare of heat. 3 months since Thomas's enforcers cornered me behind the training building, their message delivered through boots and fists disguised as corrective discipline, for an Omega who'd forgotten her place. The rib cracked. Something inside tore. I felt it happen, that wet pop that meant damage beyond bruises. But reporting it would mean questions, examinations, becoming visible in all the wrong ways. So I learned. Shallow breaths. Binding my ribs with stolen kitchen cloth. Chewing willow bark until my tongue went numb. Moving carefully, always carefully, like I'm made of glass already fractured. The younger Omegas drift in as breakfast prep begins. I slip extra biscuits into Maya's apron pocket when the head cook isn't looking. Show little Emma how to check for swelling that might mean internal bleeding. Small rebellions. Quiet resistance. You're pale today, Maya whispers, concerned. I'm fine. I lie because what else can I say? The feast that night is chaos. Visiting alphas, territorial posturing, platters of roasted meat that make my stomach turn. I move through the great hall like smoke, refilling wine, clearing plates, existing in the spaces between notice. The pain has been building all day, a pressure behind my ribs that feels like drowning from the inside. I'm carrying a tray of crystal goblets when my vision fractures. The floor tilts. Wetness floods my mouth, copper salt wrong. I try to set the tray down, to make it to the servants' corridor, to disappear before anyone sees. But my legs aren't working. The stone rushes up. Crystal shatters. And then I'm convulsing on expensive rugs, blood spilling from my lips in dark rivulets. The great hall gone silent except for my body's violent betrayal. Someone screams. Not me. I don't have the breath for it. Then a roar shakes the rafters, primal and alpha deep, making every wolf in the room bare their throat in instinctive submission. Through the haze, I see him, Charles, amber eyes blazing gold, striding toward me like vengeance incarnate. The last thing I register before darkness claims me is his voice, raw with something that sounds like anguish. How long has she been in pain? I wake to unfamiliar softness, not the thin servant's palate I'm used to, but something that cradles my broken body like it matters. Stone fireplace. Dark wood beams crossing a vaulted ceiling. Medical equipment I've only seen when warriors get injured in challenge fights. Equipment I didn't know existed for people like me. 3 months. Dr. Sarah's voice cuts through the fog, sharp with fury. She's been walking around with a punctured lung and internal bleeding for 3 months. She should be dead, Charles. She should have died weeks ago. Who knew? The question comes low, dangerous, vibrating with barely leashed rage. Who saw her struggling and did nothing? I turn my head. Pain flares, but it's different now, managed, bearable, and find Charles pacing like a caged wolf. Still wearing the leather jacket from this morning, knuckles white where his hands grip the back of a chair. When Dr. Sarah lists the injuries, cracked ribs, lung tissue damage, infection spreading toward my heart, something in his expression cracks open. Thomas's enforcers, Dr. Sarah says carefully. And according to the kitchen staff, multiple pack members saw her in obvious distress. No one reported it. Charles goes very still. They saw an Omega suffering and walked past. The culture here. Dr. Sarah hesitates. Omegas don't ask for medical care. They're told they're overreacting, that resources are for warriors, that pain is enough. He moves to my bedside, sinks into the chair positioned there. His hand finds my wrist, fingers pressing against my pulse point with devastating gentleness. The touch sends heat through my veins, something ancient and inevitable clicking into place. Recognition. His breath catches. Mate, he whispers, the word half prayer, half curse. When I wake fully, sunrise streaming through windows, he's still there. Still watching. I try to sit up to explain. I'm sorry. For the trouble. For making a scene. Stop. His voice breaks on the word. He leans forward, amber eyes searching my face like he's trying to memorize damage. You were in pain. You were dying in my pack, under my protection, and no one told me. I didn't want to be weak. Weak. He laughs bitter and raw. You worked through a punctured lung for 3 months. You hid an injury that would have dropped a warrior in days. Rebecca, you're not weak. My pack is. His thumb brushes my wrist, tracing the pulse there. I'm asking you now. Who hurt you? Who saw you suffering and turned away? The truth sits heavy on my tongue. But for the first time in 3 years, someone's asking. Someone cares enough to be angry on my behalf. So I tell him everything. The 4-line in my arm feels foreign, almost obscene. Clear fluid dripping antibiotics I didn't know existed for people like me. Pain medication that doesn't just dull the edge, but actually makes breathing possible. Rest. Actual, mandated rest in sheets that smell like pine and something distinctly Charles. This is what was happening inside you, Dr. Sarah explains, pointing to diagrams I've never seen. Lungs. Ribs. The space where fluid had been building for months, drowning me from within. When the tissue tears here, and infection sets in, Rebecca, you were going septic. Another week, maybe less. No one ever explained. I just knew it hurt, and kept hurting. The memory surfaces unwanted. Thomas's beta blocking the storage room exit, his smile cold. The Alpha King doesn't need Omegas with opinions. Consider this a lesson in knowing your place. The boot to my ribs. The wet crack. Walking away while I gasped on concrete, convinced this was just how things were. Charles brings me soup himself that evening, sets the bowl down with hands too gentle for someone who breaks bones in challenge circles. I noticed you, he says quietly. Months ago. How you sneak extra food to the Omega pups. How you stand between them and the older wolves during training. You thought you were invisible, but I saw you. The words crack something open in my chest. Other Omegas come after dark, Maya with her wrist that healed crooked from a fall. Old Margaret whose back never stopped hurting after lifting supplies wrong. They whisper their injuries like confessions, these wounds we've been taught to hide. The pattern becomes undeniable, systematic, deliberate neglect. The mate bond pulls tighter each day, my wolf singing recognition every time Charles enters the room. But the fear is louder. I'm damaged goods. A burden. An Omega who couldn't even suffer correctly. On the 4th day, I try to leave. Try to slip back to the servants' quarters where I belong. Charles catches me at the door, his hand gentle on my shoulder. You're not healed. You're not leaving. I can't stay here. I'm taking resources from wolves who deserve. Stop. He turns me to face him, amber eyes fierce. Say it. What'd you really think? The truth claws its way up my throat. I thought I deserved it. The pain. The punishment. I thought being Omega meant. My voice breaks. I thought suffering quietly was the only thing I was good at. Charles pulls me against his chest as 3 years of silent endurance finally shatters. I grieve for the girl who thought pain was her purpose, who nearly died rather than ask for help. No more, he murmurs against my hair. No more silence. No more suffering alone. For the first time in 3 years, I believe him. 2 weeks later, I can breathe without tasting copper. Charles drives me up the mountain road in his truck, past the compound gates to where the Appalachian vista opens up. Tennessee peaks rolling blue-green to the horizon, ancient and indifferent to wolf politics. It started generations ago, he says, leaning against the tailgate beside me. Omegas were servants, then they were property, then it just became tradition. No one questioned it. I didn't question it. His jaw tightens. Not until I watched you collapse bleeding on my floor. The wind carries pine scent and possibility. I don't know how to be cared for, I admit, voice small. I only know how to endure. Charles turns to me, amber eyes molten in the sunset. Then I'll teach you. Starting now. His hand cups my face with devastating gentleness. I want to claim you, Rebecca. Not because you're broken or because I'm saving you. Because you're the strongest person I've ever met, and I want the honor of standing beside you. He pauses. If you'll have me. Choice. He's giving me choice. I lean into his touch, feeling the mate bond sing between us. Yes. The claiming bite is both ancient ritual and revolution. His teeth at my neck, my permission freely given, the mark blooming dark and undeniable where everyone will see it tomorrow. You're mine to protect now, he murmurs against my skin, and I'm yours to challenge when I fail. The bond completes like lightning through my veins. Suddenly I feel him, rage at my suffering burning like wildfire, determination to dismantle every structure that enabled it, and underneath everything, fierce protective love that terrifies me with its intensity. I feel you, I whisper. Good. His forehead rests against mine. Then you'll know I mean it when I say, no more silence. Not from you, not from any Omega. Whatever it takes. The emergency council meets 3 days later, the great hall transformed into a courtroom. Charles stands at the head table, his hand resting on my shoulder, the claiming mark visible to everyone, declaration and dare combined. Effective immediately, all pack members receive equal medical care, he announces. No exceptions. Thomas rises slowly, flanked by old guard alphas whose expressions match his contempt. 1 Omega's injury and you'd bankrupt the pack. He slides papers across the table, cost analyses, projections, lies dressed as fiscal responsibility. Besides, everyone knows Omegas exaggerate. They fake injuries for attention, for preferential treatment. The accusation hangs in the air like poison. I'd like to testify. My voice cracks the silence. Charles's hand tightens on my shoulder, support, not restraint. I stand, legs still weak but voice steady. The council watches as I lift my shirt, exposing the surgical scars across my ribs, the bruising that hasn't fully faded. This is what you call faking. I let the shirt drop. In the last 5 years, 6 Omegas died from accidents in this pack. Mara fell downstairs, but her wrist was broken first. Jacob's training injury was actually internal bleeding no one treated. Sarah's infection could have been cured with antibiotics that cost less than your dinner tonight, Thomas. Some council members won't meet my eyes. Others lean forward, finally listening. You didn't refuse us medical care because of cost. I say, and my voice doesn't shake anymore. You refused because our pain gave you control. Because Omegas who suffer quietly don't ask questions, don't demand better, don't threaten your power. Thomas's face darkens. She's manipulating him. This is what happens when alphas go soft. I watched her die on my floor because this pack taught her that her pain didn't matter. Charles's voice could cut stone. If that's what you call soft, Thomas, perhaps you'd like to step outside and test exactly how soft I've become. The challenge hangs unspoken, but unmistakable. Thomas's jaw works, trapped between pride and survival. I stand there, scars exposed and voice clear, daring them to look away from what they've enabled. No one does. The unity ceremony is political theater, and everyone knows it. But I agree anyway, because Omega pups need to see that visibility doesn't always mean death. That speaking up can lead to something other than silence. The great hall glows with candlelight, wolves gathered in formal hierarchy for the traditional rituals. Wine sharing, oath renewals, pack bonds reaffirmed through ceremony as old as the mountains surrounding us. Charles stands beside me, his hand at the small of my back, protective, possessive, present. When the communal cup reaches me, silver etched with wolf symbols and filled with ceremonial wine, I drink without hesitation. Unity demands trust, even performative unity. The wrongness hits immediately. My throat closes. Not gradually, not subtle, slamming shut like a door. The cup falls from my hand, wine splashing across stone as my vision fractures into darkness and light. Wolfsbane, the bitter botanical signature underneath the wine's sweetness. My body convulses, trying to expel poison already racing through my bloodstream. Charles catches me as I collapse, his roar shaking the rafters. Dr. Sarah. Security tackles the server who poured. Thomas's cousin, I register distantly, as my body seizes against Charles's chest. The great hall transforms into emergency triage. Dr. Sarah appears with a med kit, shouting orders I can't process through the convulsions. Epinephrine. Activated charcoal. My heart stops. I feel it happen, the terrible silence in my chest, and then electricity slams through me, dragging me back. It stops again. Through the bond, I feel Charles fracturing. His wolf howling, clawing for control, the rage threatening to overwhelm everything human in him. His hands shake as he holds me, and I want to tell him it's not his fault, that I chose visibility knowing the risk. But my throat won't work. My lungs won't work. Stay with me, he begs, and I've never heard an alpha king beg before. Rebecca, stay. My heart restarts. Stops. Restarts. Somewhere beyond the medical chaos, security drags Thomas and his conspirators toward the gates. They tried to run. They always try to run when their control slips. 18 hours. That's how long I'm unconscious while my body fights wolfsbane and organ failure. 18 hours of Charles sitting vigil, hand wrapped around mine, feeling my pulse stutter and catch through the mate bond. I wake to voices in the corridor, Thomas's voice, loud and defiant. Trial by combat, as is my right under pack law. Prove you're still fit to lead or step down. Charles's response is quiet, lethal. You tried to murder my mate. There will be no mercy. Dawn breaks cold over the training grounds. I watch from the medical room window as the pack gathers, hundreds of wolves bearing witness. Charles strips off his jacket, revealing the armor beneath, while Thomas circles with a silver blade and half a dozen allies at his back. Pack law says one-on-one. Thomas has never cared much for laws that don't serve him. The fight is brutal efficiency. Thomas lunges first, blade aimed for Charles's throat. Charles sidesteps, catches his wrist, breaks it with a wet snap that echoes across the grounds. The sword falls. Charles picks it up. You beat her for saying no, Charles says, and drives the blade through Thomas's heart. You watched her suffer and called it discipline. Thomas drops. His allies surge forward. The warriors who held Omegas down, the betas who looked away, the old guard who built their power on our silence. Charles cuts them down systematically. No rage. No loss of control. Just surgical precision removing infection from his pack. Bodies fall as the sun climbs higher, 6, 7, 8. The pack physicians who refused Omega care are dragged forward next, stripped of their oaths for breaking them. You took an oath to heal, Charles says, amber eyes empty of mercy. You chose not to. The executions are swift. The message is clear. When it's over, Charles stands in blood-soaked earth, chest heaving, looking up at my window. Through the bond one feel his desperation, needing to know I'm alive, that I survived, that he hasn't lost me despite ending 13 lives to avenge my suffering. I press my palm against the glass. Alive. Still here. His shoulders drop. Relief so profound it nearly drives him to his knees. Justice and vengeance blur together at dawn. The abusers are dead. The system that protected them lies shattered in the red dirt. And somewhere in the carnage, accountability finally arrived. Too late for the Omegas already gone, but maybe soon enough for the ones still suffering in silence. By dawn, half the pack was dead. And the other half finally understood what it costs to look away. 6 weeks later, I stand in the Great Hall without pain for the first time in months. My body is healed. The pack is still learning to. Charles addresses the assembly with new laws carved in stone and sealed in blood. Mandatory monthly health screenings for all pack members, no exceptions. Omega injuries will be reported, tracked, and treated with the same urgency as warrior wounds. Medical care is a right in this pack, not a privilege earned by rank. Withholding treatment or information about injuries carries the same penalty as the injury itself. Some faces show resistance. Most show relief. Their mates are safer now. Their sisters. Their daughters. Dr. Sarah stands beside me, holding the clinic's new charter. We're training Omega medics. People who understand what it means to hide pain, who'll recognize the signs others miss. She looks at me. Rebecca's first in the program. Me. Learning to heal instead of just endure. Other Omegas flood forward in the weeks that follow. Generations of hidden suffering finally given space to speak. Maya's wrist is rebroken and set properly. Old Margaret gets treatment for her spine. Emma, barely 16, admits to an infection she's hidden for weeks because she thought asking for help meant weakness. I meet with them in what we're calling the Omega Council, recording every story in careful detail. Not just for justice, though there's that too, but for memory. So the next generation knows what their grandmothers survived. So this never becomes invisible again. The clinic opens on a cold October morning, its doors carved with wolf symbols and words Dr. Sarah chose. Your pain matters here. I cut the ribbon with shaking hands, Charles steady beside me, his presence saying what words can't, That power used correctly protects, not controls. Inside, examination rooms wait with equipment I didn't know existed 6 months ago. Omega medics trained to recognize dissociation, minimization, the language of chronic suffering. Charts tracking patterns instead of dismissing complaints. This is just the beginning, Charles murmurs as we watch wolves enter, hesitant at first, then hopeful. I lean into his shoulder. I know. Systemic change doesn't happen in one dawn execution. It happens in documented stories, trained professionals, laws that protect instead of harm. It happens when people who've been invisible their whole lives finally have space to be seen. The revolution wasn't the violence. The violence was just removing the obstruction. The revolution is this: Omegas walking into a clinic without fear, without shame, believing their pain deserves attention. The revolution is me, alive to witness it. The traditional Luna ceremony happens at dusk, when the veil between old ways and new feels thinnest. I wear the ceremonial dress, white linen embroidered with wolf symbols, but the medical alert bracelet on my wrist catches torchlight like a declaration. A reminder. A promise. The pack gathers in the ancient circle, stones worn smooth by centuries of ceremonies. But tonight's different. Tonight, healers stand beside warriors in the inner ring. Tonight, the vows have been rewritten. Elder Margaret, the Omega whose back we finally treated, performs the blessing. Her voice carries across the assembly. Rebecca Winters, do you stand here by your own will, knowing the cost? Knowing that to lead is to serve, that to be Luna is to bear witness to suffering and act. I meet her eyes. I stand here because I survived what this pack told me to endure silently. I stand here because 6 Omegas before me didn't survive. I won't let their deaths be forgotten, and I won't let their suffering continue. My voice doesn't shake. I'll make sure others survive too. Charles steps forward, his hand finding mine. The claiming mark on my neck visible to everyone, no longer shameful, no longer hidden. I claim her not as possession, but as partner in remaking this pack. Her strength exposed our weakness. Her survival demands our transformation. The blood oath follows, traditional blade, ancient words. But when our palms press together, mixing bloodlines, Dr. Sarah steps forward with the healers. They recite their own oath, newly written, to see suffering, to name it, to treat it without judgment or hierarchy. Do you accept this, Luna? Elder Margaret asks the pack. The response is mixed. Some voices rise immediately. The younger generation, the Omegas, those who lost loved ones to preventable deaths. Others hesitate. Old habits die hard, and I'm asking them to see what they've ignored for generations. But slowly the chorus builds. Not universal acceptance, but movement. Shift. Change emerging from resistance. I stand before them, scars visible beneath thin linen, the surgical marks on my ribs a map of what systemic neglect looks like on human skin. I don't hide anymore. Can't hide anymore. Won't. I'm not invisible, I say, though the ceremony script doesn't call for it. For 3 years I was invisible, and it nearly killed me. Now I'm your Luna. You'll see me. You'll see every Omega in pain. You'll see the cost of looking away. Some faces harden. Many more soften. Charles's hand tightens on mine. Through the bond, I feel his fierce pride, his protective love, his determination that never wavers. The elder raises our joined hands. Luna Rebecca, Alpha King Charles, may your reign bring healing. The pack howls, traditional, primal, beautiful. The sound rolls through the Appalachian Mountains like thunder. I am no longer the girl who scrubbed blood from stones and apologized for bleeding. I am Luna. I am witness. I am the revolution that survived. And I'm just beginning. The morning health fair buzzes with activity, blood pressure checks, nutrition counseling, children getting vitamins while their parents discuss chronic pain management with trained medics. I move through the crowd, greeting wolves by name, asking about recoveries, celebrating small victories. Maya shows me her wrist, now healed properly, gripping a coffee cup without wincing. Old Margaret laughs with other elders, comparing physical therapy exercises. Emma, 17 now, shadows Dr. Sarah, learning to recognize infection before it becomes life-threatening. 0 preventable deaths this year. 0. The number feels like vindication and grief combined. Because for every Omega we saved, there are names carved into the memorial stone at the compound's edge. 6 names. 6 lives that could have been saved if anyone had cared enough to look. I visit them most mornings, running my fingers over carved letters. Mara, Jacob, Sarah, names that deserve to be remembered. Regrets? Charles's voice comes from behind me, warm and familiar. I lean back into his chest, his arms circling my waist. The claiming mark on my neck has faded to a silver scar, but the bond remains fierce and constant. Only that it took my near death to change things. That these 6 had to die before anyone acknowledged the problem. But you're here. His lips brush my temple. You survived. You fought. You changed everything. I look at the memorial, then back at the health fair, laughter and life, and Omegas receiving care like it's normal, like it's their right. Because it is. Because we made it so. We're here, I correct softly. My hands bear scars from that night I collapsed. For tracks, surgical marks, the thin white lines of trauma written on skin. Charles's hands carry their own history. The violence required to remove obstruction, the blood price of justice. We are both marked by what we survived and what we demanded change. The compound spreads below us, sprawling estate where wolves run and new laws hold, where Omegas lead wellness programs and children learn that pain deserves attention, where being visible no longer means being vulnerable. I am no longer invisible. I am the Luna who survived and saved others. And every morning I wake up breathing without pain, I remember, this is what revolution looks like. Not the spectacular violence of one dawn, but the quiet persistence of a year of care. Of infrastructure built. Of stories documented. Of Omegas walking into clinics without fear. This is what it means to survive and insist others survive too. Charles takes my hand, scarred palm against scarred palm. The memorial behind us. The health fair before us. The future uncertain, but no longer silent. Ready, he asks. I squeeze his hand. Always. We walk back toward the living, toward the Omegas who laugh now, who speak now, who exist now without apologizing for taking up space. The invisible made visible. The suffering transformed into strength. The revolution that didn't end with violence, but began with one woman refusing to die quietly, and then refusing to let anyone else die that way either.